Welcome to Valley News Now. I'm Adam Shelf, and today I'm joined by Molly Martinez out of the DC Bureau. Molly, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a very busy past day for you and a lot to talk about today.
Hey, Adam, great to see you.
And so let's just kind of jump right into it. Yesterday, pretty early in the day, and even speculation that it could happen late on Monday. Now, Tim Walz picked for VP for the Harris ticket. And so what were your initial thoughts as that started to kind of roll out? And when did you start to get an indication that that was going to be the case?
Yeah, so Adam, her shortlist for VP was quite long. There were many contenders, many strong contenders, Democrats believed, on this VP shortlist. And Tim Walz was really a dark horse. And that's mostly because nobody outside of Minnesota, outside of the Midwest, had really heard of him before. He hasn't really made a national splash the way that some of these other candidates have. A lot of these other candidates brought a lot of very valuable things to the ticket, and Walz was relatively unknown. But Walz, although he has not really had his chance on the national stage yet, is a strong pick. He's a personable guy. I've worked with Governor Walz for the past 3 years since I've covered this region. And he's really beloved in Minnesota. And I think that Kamala Harris chose him sort of on the strength that he would be beloved by others once they got to know him.
Now, when I spoke to Nicholas Baroth, the political science chair at NDSU, he called this a conservative pick. Do you feel that this is a conservative pick then, going off what you just said?
Whether or not Walz was a conservative pick?
A conservative choice for the ticket, yeah.
I don't believe he was a conservative choice. Tim Walz is very much a progressive Democrat. You can see that in his record on Capitol Hill. You can also see that on his record as governor and his time in the governor's mansion. He is one that has really espoused Midwest values, and he has tried in all of his legislating to make Minnesota a more attractive place to live for young families. That includes things like very democratic progressive ideas like free school lunch, paid family leave. He's really investing in social programs. So this, I think he kind of comes off as the everyman, as very Midwest, but also she needs him to be an attack dog. She really can't be the one out there throwing punches. She needs someone in her corner who's willing to sort of do the dirty work. And as we've seen with JD Vance, he is very willing to take up that mantle for Donald Trump, and he is out there really dukes up, and she needs somebody sort of with that same vigor on the campaign trail to really fight for this ticket and be a little more aggressive in a way that she can't as a woman running for president. She needs someone on the ticket with her who's going to be able to sort of be more aggressive when it comes to that.
That's very interesting to hear, some very interesting context there. Now, there was a lot of speculation kind of surrounding this the last few days on who she might pick. And so let's get into who she didn't pick, and that's what that says about who she did.
Yeah, what's incredible about this selection of Tim Walz is who he was up against on this short list of VP. You have Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is hugely important in this election. He is a Democratic governor of a pretty red state. And it's a state that's really a bellwether and one that ends up deciding a lot of presidential elections. You can say the same about Andy Beshear in Kentucky. He is a Democratic, well-loved governor in a deeply red state. So both of these candidates brought forth sort of this package of a state as well, a really important consequential state. Minnesota has been deeply blue. And that is not something that they really needed to fight for. But like I said, she chose Tim Walz because he espouses these Midwest values. Whereas she also had picks like Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly has this incredible American story. He's a veteran. He was an astronaut. He's married to Gabby Giffords, who survived an attempted assassination. He has a whole list of gun control things, but also he represents a border state. And this has historically been a really weak spot for Democrats about their handlings of the border, especially with Kamala Harris as the border czar. These are things that Mark Kelly really brought to the ticket as being somebody very critical of the Democratic handling of the border. So this was really their chance to have somebody who said, we're going to take a stand. We're going to write this course. We're going to be Democrats who are tough on the border. But again, she went with Tim Walz, which, she trusted her gut on this one. And she thinks that Tim Walz is really going to be the one to buoy her through the rest of this campaign, just based off of how beloved he is in Minnesota and really banking on that investment that he's going to win over the rest of the United States.
And Walz is just a Midwest guy, educator in Nebraska, and kind of been all over that region. And it's being said that the Midwest worth its weight in gold in this election. What can you speak about the importance of the Midwest in the presidential election as well?
Yeah, if he were to be the vice president, I mean, I'm going to say the same with Burgum. If Burgum would have been the vice presidential pick, these are really unique demographics having a Midwest leader like this, because it just represents so much of America that aren't the coast. We're talking agriculture, we're talking energy. There are so many drivers of the United States economy that come from the Midwest. I'm a North Dakota girl. I spent a lot of time in Bismarck covering the state house there, and the issues that matter to North Dakota are not necessarily priorities in more populous states like California, like New York. And so there's this deep partisan divide across the United States. The United States really is three different countries in one. If you think about it, you got East Coast, West Coast, and Midwest, but they need to all work in harmony because they're all represented by the same president. And so picking a Midwest vice presidential person to share this ticket with is a very strategic move. It is the breadbasket of America. It is what fills up our gas tanks. And so it's a strategic choice to choose somebody from this region to really bring a vote that otherwise may not have been prioritized as much.
And let's talk about Burgum and Walz specifically. With all the speculation that could be Burgum, it seems like in an alternate reality, you almost could have had this Minnesota versus North Dakota showdown, which normally you're seeing on the ice in a college hockey matchup, but a classic rivalry. But now, in a very serious sense, these two are going to be going at it. Not directly, it's not VP versus VP, but they're very much going to be going at it. And we've already seen some of that gamesmanship across both sides so far. And so, as someone who's worked closely with both of those people, what are your thoughts about the matchup, if you will?
Well, Burgum is definitely a very loyal acolyte to President Trump and whatever that presidential Trump ticket was going to look like. Had there been a matchup, obviously the arena would have been Fargo. So you may have sort of gotten out of a lot of work there because it is not Walz and Burgum. But, Burgum and Walz, although they come from the same region, represent very different stories politically. Burgum is really this posing himself as this everyman billionaire, and Burgum from Arthur, North Dakota. He is somebody who has a long history of representing the state. He comes from this very unique billionaire background, which was very attractive to Donald Trump. And it's a narrative that has worked very well for Donald Trump. Whereas, as you mentioned, Tim Walz is sort of coming from this educational background. He was a football coach. He's very much more of the neighborly, avuncular, homegrown sort of narrative that they're trying to push around him. But, this, just because Burgum was not the vice presidential pick does not mean this is the last we're going to see of Burgum. Burgum has really made a name for himself in the past few months since he announced his presidential campaign of really getting his name to be known outside of the state of North Dakota. He's very well liked in North Dakota. I think a lot of people are happy with his time as governor in North Dakota. So I think he's going to continue that momentum. And like I said, this is not the last we're going to see of Burgum.
Have you ever seen this part of the country so connected to a national election?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
Have you ever seen this part of the country so closely connected to a national presidential election like this?
In all the presidential elections I've covered, the famous addendum is this is the most presidential election, the most consequential presidential election. But there is so much on the line this election that is different from what we've seen in the past. With the Supreme Court ruling of presidential immunity, that adds a whole other variable to this election. We have Donald Trump, who has gone through the court system. He's accused Democrats of vilifying the judicial system and weaponizing it against him. When and if he takes office again, whether or not he's going to use this new presidential power in a way that shields him from any, prosecutorial consequence, that remains to be seen. That's a huge fear of Democrats, that he's going to take this power and run with it. And then we also have huge national issues like abortion. That is top of the ticket. That is something that has changed since the last presidential election. The Dobbs decision really changed the course of that whole issue. Now that it's up to the states, we've seen it go through, and we've seen the consequences of that and how states have been handling it. And it's a huge issue that Democrats are taking up and that they're running on. Restore rights for reproductive rights. And that's going to be just a huge issue that has changed, like I said, since the last presidential election.
And I know you spoke on this a little bit. Just, I want to ask specifically, what do you think is next for Burgum?
Like we said, Dancing with the Stars. Just kidding. We will likely see Burgum, if Trump wins, in a cabinet position. Like I said, Doug Burgum has really been a darling to Trump, and they have a very close relationship. Donald Trump has been very complimentary of Doug Burgum. So I would not be surprised whatsoever if he were to get a cabinet position, whether that be interior, whether that be agriculture. It really depends, but he's got a lot of acumen for many different cabinet positions, and I think that Donald Trump would keep that in mind. And also, Kelly Armstrong, they might do a swap from DC back to Bismarck. We'll see, but Burgum, I think he has an illustrious political career ahead of him if Donald Trump wins.
And now we have a Vance v. Walz debate coming up September 25th. In Easton, Pennsylvania. I'm sure everyone's going to have their popcorn ready for that one. What are your initial thoughts on the debate that's going to be just coming down in about 6 weeks here?
Both of these debates, even if there's a presidential debate as well, are going to be so interesting to watch because, as we all saw from the last debate, it was painful to watch. And I think a lot of Democrats sort of jumped ship when they saw President Biden's performance in the last debate. The person that I watched it with likened it to somebody walking with a stack of plates that wasn't sure-footed. So I think there's a big sigh of relief that President Biden will no longer be making any appearances on the debate stage. And instead, now we have four very skilled debaters. JD Vance and Walz have never shied away from a verbal fight, and that's all a debate is. Kamala Harris is a very seasoned prosecutor. She is no stranger to taking up a debate and holding her stance. Donald Trump, as we know, never backs down. And so this is going to be two incredible matchups to watch because I think there is parity in how both of these candidates will debate each other. And it's just going to be wonderful to watch. What I'm hoping is it's fewer personal attacks and more policy attacks. That's what interests me, to see, where they stand on the issues that will affect those who are voting for them. But sparks are going to fly.
And I just want to ask lastly here, it's been wild. It's been, dare I say, an election that's going to be talked about decades from now in classrooms and with potentially defining implications for the future of our country. As someone who's been on the beat for not just the last few weeks, but really the last few years, what are your thoughts on this as a journalist and as a citizen of the United States?
Adam, one of my coworkers said, "I'm tired of living in the unprecedented times." It's just we're seeking a moment of normalcy. It's just we've been aging in dog years over here because every day it's something new, it's something unprecedented, it's something consequential. July alone was one of the most wild months in politics we've ever seen. We're likening it back to 1968 when just everything was happening all at once. But this is an important moment. This is a moment that is reshaping history. It's reshaping the trajectory of the United States. It's reshaping our policy. It's reshaping what kind of world we're going to live in. And we're really at the narrow end of the wedge here of where we're going to go as a country. And it's so important, this election, because whoever is elected will decide that trajectory. And so while it's exhausting working in a newsroom, as you know right now, it's also so important. And I feel honored to be able to be here and bring this information to our viewers, and just information that everyone needs to receive and make their own opinions on and vote accordingly. And it's so important for all of us to really be engaged right now. And like I said, it's an honor to be able to report for the people of North Dakota.
Molly, thank you so much for your time and some great information, some great insight today. Really appreciate you. I know it's just been such a busy few days for you out there in D.C. So one more time, thank you for joining us on Valley News Now. Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
As I said, everybody who works in a newsroom and all the voters, good luck. we're in for another wild 90 days. And, there's a lot of game left on the clock. So much has happened, but, we're still in the third quarter here. And just keep your eyes open. A lot more will happen. And we don't know what that looks like, but we're going to be ready to roll with the punches.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Molly. That's all for now on Valley News Now. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay with us on Valley News Live for more information throughout the day, throughout the election process.